The warm sunset bathed the residential area in the Alamo Heights district of suburban San Antonio in a golden hue. Inside a two-story home with white walls and subdued brick construction, Martha Wilson was bustling about. "Emily, how's your homework coming along?" "Mom can take a look," Martha called out to the living room while chopping ingredients at the kitchen island counter. There, an 8-year-old girl was frowning at her math worksheet with a pencil between her lips. Martha works as an editor at a local publishing company. She had just returned home after being tied up in meetings with authors since morning. "Math was difficult today, but the teacher praised me," Emily answered brightly, proudly holding up her worksheet. "I just don't understand this problem." Martha wiped her hands and sat next to Emily. She gently stroked the girl's long brown hair while looking at the problem. "Well, let's think about this together. To find the area of this shape." A timer went off in the kitchen, and Martha stood up. Even as she went to check on the chicken, she continued her explanation in a raised voice. "First, we find the area of the rectangle, and then subtract the triangular portion." "How do we calculate the area of a triangle again?" "Base times height divided by 2. Emily answered confidently. "That's right." Martha smiled and took the chicken out of the oven. The Tex-Mex spiced chicken released aromas of paprika and cumin. Thursday dinner was a family tradition, a day to enjoy Texan cuisine. The table was already set with corn tortillas, homemade salsa, and fresh avocados. The sound of the front door opening made Emily's face light up. "It's Dad." She dropped her math worksheet and ran to the entrance. Thomas works as a project manager at a local IT company. Seeing his daughter running toward him, he placed his bag on the floor and opened his arms wide. "Hey, princess. How was your day?" Emily jumped into her father's arms for a hug. "Ms. Mandela put my drawing up in the classroom. Everyone was looking at it." "That's wonderful. Will you show it to me sometime?" Thomas carried Emily as he headed to the kitchen. When his eyes met Martha's, he showed her a warm smile. Martha smiled back and gave him a light kiss. "Welcome home. Looks like you had a tough day. The deadline for a new project is approaching. But seeing you two makes me forget everything." Thomas put Emily down and put his arm around Martha's shoulder. He looked tired, but seemed comforted by being with his family. "Go wash up. Dinner's ready. Smells great." "I'm starving," Thomas said as he gently patted Emily's head. The family of 3 gathered around the dining table and discussed the day's events. Martha talked about her new children's book project, while Thomas shared his work troubles with humor. Emily explained her adventures with friends at school with animated gestures, and her parents listened with genuine enjoyment. After dinner, while Emily went to her room to finish her homework, Martha and Thomas spent some quiet time on the porch. The Texas twilight was long, with the first stars beginning to shine in the purplish sky. "Martha, I'm truly happy that you came into our lives," Thomas said while holding her hand. "I'm the one who's happy to have met you and Emily." Martha rested her head on her husband's shoulder. "Emily is a wonderful child. You've raised her well." Thomas was silent for a moment. "No, it's because you came. You've become a wonderful mom." Martha smiled, but in her heart, she was thinking about Emily's birth mother. Thomas rarely talked about his ex-wife. She had heard the divorce was due to differences that were too great, but didn't know the details. When Martha met Thomas, he was already raising 6-year-old Emily. According to Thomas, Caroline had moved to another state soon after the divorce and had relinquished her visitation rights. As a result, Emily barely remembered Caroline and called Martha Mom. Martha sometimes wondered about a mother who could leave her child behind, but she always dismissed these thoughts. Now, she had Thomas and Emily. They were her family. "Are you ready for the church gathering tomorrow?" Thomas continued. "Yes, I'll bake a cake." Emily said she wanted to help, so I hope I can get home early tomorrow. "I'll try to get home early too," Thomas promised. "After church on Sunday, shall we go to the river walk?" Emily's been wanting to ride a boat. "That sounds lovely," Martha agreed. "Family time is the most important, isn't it?" They sat quietly for a while, watching as more stars appeared in the night sky. Around 10 p.m., Martha entered Emily's room and kissed her daughter, who was already in bed. Thomas followed and placed a kiss on Emily's forehead. "Good night, princess. Sweet dreams." "Good night, Dad, Mom," Emily said with a yawn. "Can we really ride the boat on Sunday?" "I promise," Thomas smiled. After leaving Emily's room, Martha and Thomas headed to their bedroom. They got into bed and confirmed their plans for tomorrow. "I have an important publishing meeting tomorrow. It's about a new children's literature series," Martha explained. "I have a meeting about a new software project." "It's an important client," Thomas said as he turned off the lamp. In the darkness, he put his arm around his wife. "I love you, Martha." "I love you too," Martha replied, resting her head on his chest. Martha listened to her husband's steady breathing, thinking about how fortunate she was. She had a loving husband and daughter. They were her world. Friday morning began with the usual rush. Martha got up early to make coffee and say her morning prayers. Since Thomas was working from home that day, Martha woke Emily up and took her to school after breakfast. "Have a good day. Dad will pick you up," Martha kissed her daughter. At 2 p.m., Martha was in the middle of an important meeting at the publishing house. Her smartphone vibrated several times, and when she checked, it was from the school. "Mrs. Wilson. Emily suddenly developed a high fever and is lying down in the nurse's office." Unable to leave the meeting, Martha called Thomas. "Thomas, Emily has a fever at school. I can't leave this meeting. Could you pick her up and take her to Methodist Hospital if necessary?" "Of course. I'll go right away. Don't worry, I'll take care of it." At 4:30 p.m., when the meeting ended, Martha tried to contact Thomas, but it went to voicemail. After several attempts with no answer, she called the school and was told that Thomas had picked Emily up around 2:30 p.m. When she inquired at the hospital, there was no sign of them. Growing anxious, Martha left work early and arrived home around 6 p.m., but the house was empty. Even after contacting Thomas's friends and workplace, no one knew their whereabouts. Martha called the police, but was told, "We can't accept a missing person report for an adult until 24 hours have passed. But my 8-year-old daughter is with him. Something might have happened. I understand your concern, but in most cases, they return voluntarily within 24 hours. That night, Martha couldn't sleep at all. The next morning, after formally filing a missing persons report, the police tried to track Thomas's cell phone location, but it was turned off and couldn't be traced. Returning home, Martha searched for clues and discovered divorce papers in Thomas's desk. From them, she learned that his ex-wife Caroline actually lived in San Antonio and worked at Methodist Hospital. When Martha visited Methodist Hospital, she was told that Caroline had been absent without notice for 3 days. From a colleague named Liz, she learned that Caroline had a photo of Thomas and had said she would get everything back. Caroline often talked about Thomas. She called him her ex-husband, but it seemed like she still loved him. Did she show any unusual behavior recently? Come to think of it, she had been saying she would get everything back. It was creepy. The police investigated Caroline's home and found numerous photos of Thomas and Emily taken from a distance. It was evidence that Caroline had been stalking them. 3 days after their disappearance, Thomas's car was found in a forest near the Guadalupe River. Martha received a call from the police and rushed to the scene. Several patrol cars were parked at the scene, and Thomas's navy blue SUV was surrounded by yellow tape. Only Emily's jacket and Thomas's cell phone remained in the car. There was no sign of them. There's no evidence of a struggle inside the vehicle. The doors were not locked, the police officer explained. Martha touched the jacket with trembling hands and whispered, "Where are you?" while fighting back tears. "We'll examine the contents of the cell phone. We might find some clues." The morning after the discovery, Martha's cell phone rang. It was from an unknown number, but when she answered, she heard Emily's weak voice whispering, "Mom, help me." The call was immediately disconnected, but Martha promptly reported it to the police and requested that the call be traced. "We've located the position," Detective Rodriguez said over the phone. The call was made from a cell tower near Caroline's home. Martha took notes with trembling hands. "Where is that?" "In the northeast part of the city, the Greenwood district. We're already headed to the scene. Please wait at home." "No, I'm coming too," Martha said firmly. "Mrs. Wilson, it could be dangerous. Please leave this to the professionals. My daughter needs me. Something might happen before you arrive." After hanging up, Martha explained the situation to her friend Judy, and they jumped into the car. "She's the ex-wife, right? Why would she go this far?" Judy asked while driving. Thomas didn't talk about it in detail. He just said, "Our differences were too great." Martha stared out the window. According to the divorce papers, she seems to have had mental issues. When they arrived at the Greenwood district, several patrol cars were already surrounding Caroline's apartment. Detective Rodriguez spotted Martha and frowned. "I told you it could be dangerous. It's about my daughter. Please understand." The detective sighed. "All right. But please wait in the car." Martha watched breathlessly as the detectives approached the apartment. They knocked on the door and identified themselves as police. There was no response. A few minutes later, an officer with a warrant arrived, and they forced the door open. After a tense 20 minutes, Detective Rodriguez returned. His expression was rigid. "The apartment is empty. However, we found this." He showed her a tablet displaying a map with a red dot marked in the forest. This map was attached to her refrigerator. "It's a spot about 5 kilometers north of the Guadalupe River, where the car was found. There seems to be a small cabin there. Are Emily and Thomas there?" "It's possible. We're calling in a special team," the detective said with a serious expression. "We also found these." He showed her an evidence bag containing dozens of photos. They were pictures of Thomas and Emily's daily routines taken from a distance: school, shopping, park, in front of their house. These photos appear to have been taken over the past 6 months. Your home, workplace, Emily's school. I had no idea. Thomas said his ex-wife had left town. Did your husband know his ex-wife was nearby? I don't know, but if he knew, he would have told me. Dr. Sanchez, a police psychologist, approached. Mrs. Wilson, we found a diary in Caroline's room. From what I've read, she matches the profile of a typical stalker-kidnapper. What does that mean? Martha asked anxiously. Her goal is probably to recreate a complete family. She likely has a distorted desire to reclaim her daughter as her own child and repair her relationship with her ex-husband. But Emily barely remembers her. That's the problem. There's a big gap between reality and her delusion. When the delusion breaks, she might behave unpredictably. 30 minutes later, a police special operations team had assembled. A helicopter was prepared, and a rescue operation plan was being formulated. The cabin is in the forest, not visible from the road, explained Chief Johnson, the operation commander. According to satellite images, it's a small two-story cabin. There's an open space of about 100 meters around it, which will make approach difficult. I want to go too, Martha said. Absolutely not, Chief Johnson replied immediately. But if Emily could hear my voice. The chief pondered. All right. But keep a safe distance and absolutely follow our instructions. As dusk fell, final checks for the operation were conducted. Martha was preparing at a waiting point at the forest entrance with paramedics. She was a former nurse, wasn't she? Dr. Sanchez asked Martha. He was accompanying the rescue operation to provide psychological support. Yes, I believe so. But she was working as a receptionist at the hospital. According to her diary, she became mentally unstable after a miscarriage. That might have been the cause of the divorce. Martha was surprised. Miscarriage. Thomas never mentioned it. It was probably a painful experience for him too. Caroline seems to have fallen into a deep depression and started blaming Thomas. She wrote that he didn't support me enough. That's terrible. She received treatment and appeared to recover for a time. However, when she learned that Thomas had remarried and was living happily with you, her obsession and jealousy resurged. Martha exhaled softly. I want to resent her, but somehow, I understand her suffering. It's important to seek healing, not revenge. Your family and Caroline, everyone is hurting. Suddenly, there was movement around the cabin. Multiple officers rushed toward the doors and windows. The light and sound of flashbangs broke the night stillness. Martha held her breath and waited. Seconds later, the radio sounded again. Martha's knees went weak. They were alive. Emily was safe. Thomas too. Let's go, Chief Johnson said. As they approached the cabin, Caroline emerged surrounded by officers. She offered no resistance and stared blankly ahead. When her eyes met Martha's, she showed a strange smile. He is mine. We were supposed to be happy together, she whispered. Martha ignored her and rushed into the cabin. Paramedics were wrapping Emily in a blanket and providing first aid. Emily. The girl looked up and reached out to Martha with tears streaming down her face. Mom. You came. Martha embraced her daughter tightly. Of course. I've been searching for you all this time. I was scared. That woman kept saying I'm your real mom, and Dad wouldn't wake up. It's okay now, Emily. Mom is here. You were very brave. We were able to find you because you called us using Dad's phone. Dad. Is Dad okay too? Yes, Dad is safe too. The doctors are checking him now. You'll see him soon. Other paramedics were carrying Thomas out on a stretcher. He was conscious but groggy. When Martha approached, he opened his eyes and weakly reached out. Martha. I'm sorry. It's okay, Thomas. You're safe now. Martha held his hand tightly. Caroline. I didn't know she was at the hospital. Thomas spoke haltingly. Emily. She's fine. See for yourself. Martha brought Emily over. Seeing her father, Emily's face showed relief. Dad. An ambulance arrived, and Thomas and Emily were to be taken to the hospital. Martha was allowed to go with them. Before departing, Detective Rodriguez approached Martha. Mrs. Wilson, we'd like to get your formal statement at the police station tomorrow. Of course. But now. I understand. Be with your family, the detective smiled. You did well. Before boarding the ambulance, Martha caught a glimpse of Caroline being placed in a police vehicle. She now appeared small and deflated, and seemed to be crying. The psychologist's words echoed in Martha's mind, everyone is hurting. Martha held her child's and husband's hands and boarded the ambulance. In the darkness, the ambulance siren wailed, carrying them to the hospital. 3 months later, Martha was making coffee in the kitchen, watching the autumn sunlight streaming through the window. San Antonio's autumn was mild, with trees beginning to turn red and yellow. She took her mug and sat on the living room sofa. On the coffee table lay a manuscript she was working on. It was a book titled Recovery from Trauma: The Path to Healing. With the understanding of her publishing company, Martha had decided to write a book based on her experience. It was a practical guide on the psychological recovery and regeneration of victim families, hoping to help those who had similar experiences. Footsteps could be heard from the stairs, and Martha looked up. Emily came down wearing her school backpack, with her hair braided on one side. Good morning, Emily. Did you sleep well? Martha asked gently. Yes, I didn't have any nightmares, Emily said proudly. After the incident, Emily had suffered from nightmares. Even after being discharged from the hospital, she would sometimes wake up screaming in the middle of the night. However, with weekly psychological counseling, she was gradually recovering. That's good. Breakfast is ready, Martha pointed to the dining table. Warm pancakes and fruit were arranged on the table. Emily sat at the table and said a short prayer of thanks. Martha watched her daughter with a smile. Little by little, everyday life was returning. I'm going to the library with Jessica today, Emily said with her mouth full of pancakes. That sounds fun. Dad will pick you up after school, okay? Emily paused for a moment and looked at Martha. Will Dad really come? Martha's heart ached. The impact of trauma runs deep in children. She knelt beside her daughter. Of course. We promised, didn't we? We keep our promises. Emily nodded, seeming somewhat reassured. A sound came from the entrance, and Thomas appeared with his document case. He had a late start to work once a week to visit a psychiatrist. Good morning, family, he said with a smile. Dad. Emily jumped off her chair and hugged her father. Good morning, Princess. You look energetic today, Thomas lifted his daughter. I'm going to the library today. Come pick me up after school. I promise. I'll come right after my work meeting ends. Martha offered Thomas coffee. He showed a grateful smile. How are you today? Martha studied her husband's face. I'm doing well. Dr. Ramirez says I'm making progress. He showed a slightly brighter expression. The nightmares are becoming less frequent. Thomas was also dealing with emotional wounds. The fear of not understanding what was happening while Caroline drugged him and made him groggy. And the guilt of putting his family in danger because of him. These weren't easy to heal. I'm glad, Martha gently stroked her husband's arm. Little by little is fine. Martha, how's your book coming along? Thomas looked at the manuscript on the sofa. It's going well. The editor-in-chief is interested too, Martha answered with a smile. By writing this book, I might be able to help others. You're strong. Trying to turn this experience into something positive. I'm grateful every day that our family can be together. After Emily left for school, Martha and Thomas shared some time on the porch. They drank coffee in silence in the gentle morning light. Martha, Thomas suddenly looked at her with a serious expression. There's something I need to tell you. Martha noticed the change in her husband and put down her cup. What is it? Actually, I knew Caroline had returned to town. Thomas lowered his gaze. Martha gasped. Why didn't you tell me? I heard she was receiving treatment. I thought she was recovering. Thomas tensed his shoulders. And I didn't want to worry Emily. I wanted to leave the past in the past. But for her to do something like this. That's my sin. Tears welled up in Thomas's eyes. I couldn't see through her condition. I put you and Emily in danger. I'm truly sorry. At first, Martha couldn't find words. But seeing the regret and guilt etched on her husband's face, her heart softened. Thomas, I wish you had told me, she said quietly. But you did what you thought was best, didn't you? I was told by her psychiatrist that she was significantly improved. That she had found a job and was taking her medication regularly. Why were you in contact with her? Thomas exhaled deeply. Out of guilt. After her miscarriage, I couldn't support her enough. I left her to suffer alone. Even after the divorce, I was hoping for her recovery. Martha took her husband's hand. You're a good person, Thomas. That's why I love you. But from now on, let's talk about everything. Secrets hurt families. Thomas nodded and squeezed his wife's hand. I promise. I'll never put you in danger again. What will happen to Caroline? Martha asked. She's committed to a psychiatric hospital. At the trial, her diminished responsibility due to mental illness was recognized. It seems she'll have a long-term hospitalization while receiving treatment. Martha looked up at the sky. I can't hate her. She was suffering too. Thank you, Martha. Thomas embraced his wife. Your kindness saves me. That weekend, the Wilson family decided to have a barbecue in their backyard. Thomas was grilling meat, and Martha was setting the table. Emily had invited her new friend Jessica. The two girls were running around the backyard, their laughter echoing throughout the garden. Several friends from church also visited, spending a peaceful autumn afternoon together. They were the people who had supported Martha during the incident and helped with the search. We are family. Let's continue to overcome whatever comes our way together. Martha gave a small speech at the barbecue. Amen, the surrounding people responded. Thank you, Martha. Thomas took his wife's hand. I'm truly happy to have you. As the children played and the adults chatted, Martha watched her family and friends from a distance. Having overcome a crisis, they were stronger than before. Wounds remained, but they had found the courage to move forward while carrying them. As the sun began to set and the sky turned purple, Martha saw Emily sitting on a tree swing, holding hands with Thomas. The bond between father and daughter had deepened through their ordeal. Hey, Dad, Emily's voice carried on the wind. Will Caroline ever get better? Thomas seemed surprised by his daughter's question but answered gently. Yes. She's sick. But good doctors are treating her. I remember a little bit, Emily said in a small voice. When she was holding me. She was crying. I see, Thomas said quietly. But Martha Mom is my mom, Emily said clearly. Because Martha Mom came to find me. That's right, Emily. Martha is a wonderful mom. Thomas stroked his daughter's hair. Martha felt a warmth in her chest. She quietly approached the two and sat next to Emily. Mom! Emily exclaimed happily. I'm truly blessed to have such a wonderful family. Martha embraced them both. Above them, the first stars had begun to shine. A new chapter for this family that had overcome their trial was about to begin. Meanwhile, at a psychiatric hospital in the city, Caroline sat by the window, gazing at the scenery outside. She was under strict supervision, receiving psychiatric treatment, gradually beginning to understand the gravity of her actions. How are you today, Miss Hunt? The nurse who entered asked. What have I done? Caroline began to cry. I just wanted to get my family back. I understand that, the nurse said kindly. But they had already started a new life. I know that, now. Caroline looked out the window. Was Emily happy? Yes, she's in a wonderful home. Caroline nodded slightly. It was a long road, but she too was slowly beginning to face reality. On her desk was a diary she was writing as part of her therapy. A page was open that read, I ruined their lives. But now I want to focus on healing myself. Outside the window, the same autumn twilight spread, and the same stars began to shine. In different places and different circumstances, they were all beginning a long journey toward healing and reconciliation.